I want you to put your hands together.
There goes to the neighborhood. There goes to the neighborhood.
And welcome him to the stage. Big round of applause.
There goes to the neighborhood.
Alrighty, we are back with episode 21 of the SmokeScreen podcast. We're getting up in the double digits.
Yes, we are.
I'm your host, Bobby Baratheon.
Holy shit. I'm really
sorry. I was trying to do the squeaky laugh. there it is. There it is. We got to do this next comedy skit too, by the way.
Yes, we do.
Anyway, first, before we get started, let me thank our newest Patreon, Proto Peach. Thank you, Peach, so much.
Thank you,
Appreciate
Peach.
it. She is a member on the regular SmokeScreen channel and longtime member and supporter, so thank you so much. But today we're getting back into, we just seem to be drawn to true crime. And,
we do.
And so we're going back to another Netflix documentary that we talked about this months and months ago.
Yeah.
And I felt like we talked about it so much, I felt like we did a podcast on it.
Right. So we had to go back and look through all the podcasts to make sure
Right.
because it felt like it.
So we're talking about Abducted in Plain Sight. If you have not seen this, you have to see this documentary. So we're going to get into it here. It's a crazy story. It's fascinating. It's horrible all at the same time.
Yeah.
So pause this, check it out, and then come back because we're going to go into it pretty deep and just talk about all the different crazy aspects of this story. But this was back in the 70s.
Yeah, they don't get much crazier.
No, I don't think you can get much crazier as far as the
True stories anyway.
Yeah, true crime. Yeah. I mean, maybe it really is. It's like you said. It's like it almost seems fictional.
It does.
I don't know. So yeah, I guess we'll run through the general story and then we'll kind of just take it as we go. So James, you know
I'll
it
set
a
up.
lot better. Yeah, you do the
I'll
setup.
just set up this story. It takes place in Idaho. In let me make sure, Pocatello, Idaho, and there's a family. They're called the Brobergs. It's a husband and wife, and they have 3 little daughters. Evidently at church, they run into a new family who moved to the neighborhood, and they were the Birchtolds, and that was a husband and wife and 5 children. And I guess shortly after they met,
And they met in their church, I believe. It was a local community, small community, so that's where they saw them first in church.
Yep.
And, which is fairly common, the new folks, and then you go greet the new people in town, and everybody knows each other in these small towns.
yeah, they hung out, had a pleasant visit, and then out of the blue, the Brobergs come home, and there's this huge fruit basket there with a thank you card and saying basically it's really cool hanging out with you. We ought to hang out more.
Right.
They thought this guy was the salt of the earth.
Apparently.
So basically it starts out by saying, that the families started hanging out. I can see that, grilling, whatever they're doing, just hanging out. And the kids, each had a new best friend because they were stair-stepped in a way that both families had kids around the same age. So they all had best friends. And then what you hear really quick in the documentary is the dad of the new family has eyes for the 12-year-old daughter of the Brobergs. Her name is Jan.
And she's the central character in this horrible story, but just it's fascinating to look back upon and how this happened, how it was allowed to happen in a lot of ways.
Right.
And this creep was a 40-year-old dude. This girl was 12 when this all started, I believe.
Yeah. Technically, he was 38, but you can call him 40. Exactly.
Whatever.
She calls him 40 in the documentary.
Exactly.
As well.
Yeah. Whatever. So the way the documentary is laid out is it starts off quick. It's not like one of those slow burns.
That's what I like about it.
We were going to watch that one last week and do a podcast, or a week before, and we was like, this will be good. And we watched it and was like,
I know.
We would get 15 minutes out of it maybe. It was just kind of slow.
And 20 minutes into this one, and you're like, yes, this is a podcast.
Exactly.
People need to watch this one.
Right. So I guess from there, the way the documentary sets it up is it immediately jumps to, basically 2 years later. You don't know that. They'll go back and fill it in. all the details.
Exactly.
But he comes over one day to invite her to go horseback riding, and that's when the actual first kidnapping takes place.
Yes,
and
funny you say first.
Yes,
so
exactly.
See, guys,
it's insane how this continued. I mean, even up until like 28 years later, when he was still. We'll get into all that, but so anyway, she gets kidnapped, but at the time you're not really sure what's going on. Obviously, because it was set up as we're going horseback riding for the day. The mom says, "Okay, no problem. Be back before dark or before dad gets home."
Yep.
And because this was a normal thing, he had taken on trips before. She was the oldest daughter, so she had been on trips with their family on vacation and sleepovers. And then so you find out she gets taken, and you know it's a kidnapping story, right? And then they come back and fill you in for the last 2 years before it actually happened.
Yeah. So basically what happens, because you fill in the blanks pretty easy on this one. The dad comes home. She's still not home yet. They wait a while, still not home. His wife, Bert Stoll's wife, comes over. It's like 9 or 10 o'clock at night. It's still not there. They're wanting to call the police, and she's like, "No, please don't get the law involved. He'll be back. He'll be back." And so they waited that night.
Yeah, it's going to be any time now.
Yeah.
The sun came up, and they still wasn't back.
Wasn't back. So that was a Thursday that they left. So Friday comes and goes. It's Saturday, and it shows the mom, and she says, "Okay, well, if it's not back by Sunday."
Yeah, she picked up the phone wanting to call, and like, "Nah, I don't want to bother all these people. It's probably nothing. I'm sure they just broke down and whatever." And that sounds ridiculous, and it is after a night. I mean, a couple. Well, I guess after the sun comes up the next day, it's ridiculous. But even in those days, because you didn't have cell phones. You got to keep that in perspective. There were no cell phones in those days. This was 74, right? So
74,
year before I was born. Yeah. So 74, there's, it was because I remember growing up before we had cell phones, somebody said, "I'll be there around 8," and they don't get there until midnight. You're worried to death, but you can't do anything about it.
Right.
I mean, because things happen.
That's right.
And you're not expecting, something horrible.
Yeah, you keep thinking as soon as they get to a phone, they'll call, or they're going to show up.
Right.
One of the two.
They got to get to a payphone or go home somewhere, somebody's house. That's the only way you could, so there was no, instant communication and tracking phones and all that bullshit.
So you could see how some hours would bleed by.
Oh, sure.
But, once it gets into days, because you might not even be thinking the guy has kidnapped your daughter. You should at least be calling the law in case something happened to him.
You should be looking for wrecks or something, because that's what they thought. They thought, well, something happened to both of them.
Right.
It would never be him doing something with her.
Right.
It wasn't a kidnapping in their minds.
Yep.
But then they finally got a hold of the police, and the police said, "Yeah, this is weird. We're calling the FBI."
Yeah. The police had to convince them to call it a kidnapping. Because, I'm sorry, maybe not. Maybe I jumped the gun there. The cops pretty quickly find his Ford Maverick, and the window's busted out, and there's blood on the door. But the FBI agent says the funny thing was the window was busted out from the inside, and the glass was outside. So
there's a little bit of blood on the glass and door, and then there were prints walking away, and then tire tracks from an RV that they had also went and found that he had an RV in storage and it was missing.
And it was gone.
So that's when the FBI got involved and said, "This is a kidnapping. You people have to understand what's going on here."
Yep.
This is not something where they went off and somebody, he tried to make it look like, but that was for her, I think, her benefit.
Yeah.
When we get into the crazy story of how she found out. Because you do find out when she was kidnapped that as soon as before they got a driveway, I think, he gave her quote-unquote allergy medication.
Yeah, it looked like while they were backing out.
While they were backing out, and she blacked out and never remembered the trip or anything.
And so while it shows the family discussing, how they got the FBI involved and everything, it kind of does a flashback and fills in those 2 years from when they met to when the abduction happened. And pretty quickly, everybody who's in the documentary says, it was pretty clear he had eyes for Jan, and that's the oldest daughter.
Yes.
And he would he would take a lot of pictures of her, and it showed some of these pictures. And Chris and I were talking, there's no way I would allow a man to take a picture of my daughter like that. Now, you can tell she's rolling around the couch, giggling and stuff, but there's, little upskirt type looking pictures and stuff like that. And again, this was pre-instant photos, so I'm sure they may not know that he took pictures of her upskirt, but still, just the fact that a grown man you're having over for, let's say a cookout, and he's in the living room taking pictures of your little 11-year-old daughter on the couch.
Right.
So they said
he's not out there with the adults like normal, and the kids are all playing together.
Right.
He's in there with the kids, and you're not even suspicious.
You find out that they all had a nickname for him. His name was Robert, and which Bob would be short for Robert. Well, they even shortened it more. They all called him B.
Yeah, just B.
Bumblebee
tuna.
Yeah. Val. So he had a nickname for just Jan. He called her Dolly. And so anyway, he what was I going to say? I had a little oh yeah. He offered, because he owned some kind of furniture company and he was a handyman. He noticed that the two oldest daughters shared a room in the basement that was really big, and he offered and did build a wall in the room to divide those girls, so they could have privacy as they got older. That was his excuse.
And you can see how that would fly to the girls. Like, I could get my own room just by putting this wall up.
Yep.
And that was his first step, I think, into isolating people, because this is how he played this game. He isolated this family and fucked with all their heads.
Yep. So first step was get the two oldest sisters apart. And then you want to talk about how he started separating the rest of the family.
So this was his master plan, was to not just go at it directly. He had this whole master plan. So it starts with the mom, I believe. So
I think so.
It was, I'm down here working at because he was described, because let me say this really quick too. He got in fairly, he fit in so good with his family because he was similar to the dad, and they were businessmen in the community.
Yeah.
Everybody knew the dad, and so everybody became, known, he had this furniture store, so.
And the dad was a florist.
They had a lot in common.
Yep.
And so they all clicked really well, apparently.
Yep.
So,
and the mom was a stay-at-home mom.
Mom was a stay-at-home mom. So he calls her, first of all, and says, hey, I'm down here working and I ain't had time to eat. Do you mind bringing me a sandwich? And, in those days it was a different time, but still. It's still odd. She says, okay.
He's got his own wife at home.
You got your own wife and kids.
Right.
So
why can't your wife bring you a sandwich?
But this is where it starts getting into their faults.
Yep.
And I don't want to beat them up any more than they've been beat up. But we got to mention that at the time, these two were completely clueless or a little bit selfish, and we'll get into that too. She actually does it. She takes him, I guess she packs him a lunch.
Right.
And takes him a sandwich, and, of course, he hits on her, tells her she's pretty and her body's nice and all these things she wants to hear. Because at this time, she does say, she's been married at this point for 12 or 13 years.
Yeah.
And,
he's saying things she hadn't heard
in a long time.
Yeah.
And so I don't think anything particular happened that day. It was more of a, complimenting her and whatever. But it got the tickles going.
That's a good way to put it.
It got the tickles going
believe that's
in her head.
The way she says it, it was a feeling. She could not stop thinking about the feeling that gave her.
And she didn't want to feel that way because she did love her husband.
Yep.
So that's how he started playing the mom. And then the other side of this, which was just insane to me. And
this
James, you said the same
out of
thing.
Nowhere. You are not expecting this part.
Right. Because, we can relate more to this, the father aspect of this, I think, obviously, as fathers. So he comes over to him and, isolates him and, hey, let's go for a ride type thing. I think they were having lunch or something or whatever. And so it's him and the dad. And they are riding out, and he's basically complaining I can't stand my wife. She never has sex with me. Essentially, I got blue balls. I need some relief.
Yeah.
And they park out beside some lake somewhere or something, just on the side of, out in the middle of nowhere. And actually says, can you help me out? Can you give me some relief? And this dad, who has 3 daughters at home, been married for 13 years.
Yeah.
And he admits himself in the documentary, says, and I stupidly reached over and gave him relief in the form of masturbation.
He sure did.
So he plays him that way, in a sexual way with the father.
Yeah, he says something like, "Oh, come on, Bob, it's just kid stuff or kid shit or something like that." It won't do any harm.
I don't know about you, but at any given, I don't care what year it is. If a buddy of mine was in the car and said, "Hey, man, can you help me out with some relief?"
Dutch rudder me.
I mean, come on, dude. Like we said, Andrew Dice Clay said it the best. We won't have to necessarily repeat it here.
Right.
But the dude obviously has some homosexual tendencies or whatever. I mean,
Yeah.
obviously, because anybody, I don't care how good of friends you are, you'd kick him in the face and say, go squeeze one off. I mean, whatever you got.
Right.
You're not going to do it.
Another buddy of mine, after watching it, he told me, he's like, I really feel sorry for that dad, but I got to say, I think he waited his whole life for one of his buddies to ask him to jerk him off.
I'm telling you. I mean, it was obviously there's something going on there.
Yeah.
Which is fine, but it's just it was just weird and out of left field for like what you're expecting as you go along through this documentary.
And Chris and I were like joking around, like, you'd say to the guy, well, fucking go home and jerk off.
Right.
What the hell you expect me to do about it? You kiss my ass.
Exactly.
I mean, and then move on with your life,
Exactly. So the idea was that now he has, because I don't know that first time if B and the mother kissed or anything.
Nothing.
It was nothing.
It was
the
just church trip.
Right. So then later on, he continues this game. They
Yep.
go up to it was a different location where there was a church event in the mountains.
Yep.
And somehow or another, it's perfectly okay for B, this guy, to run off with the wife again, and she rides with him out just on a trip through the mountains, and they start with the flirting again, and this time it goes to a little further.
Yeah, necking, and he touched her breast.
Yes, kissing, necking, little bit of, filling up or whatever, and that's as far as it went that time, but it kind of solidified this secret relationship thing.
That's right. Now he has a secret with the dad. He has a secret with the mom.
Right. They both are physical.
Yep. And he knows that neither one of them are going to confess to the other. He's got them. And
right.
He's also, now he's got the daughters separated physically.
Right. So he split these people apart, literally, physically with the wall, with the daughters.
Yep.
And mentally with the 2 secrets and for the
Yes.
parents.
Yes.
So it's a crazy, crazy thing. So
he's got the dad going nuts in his head. I'm sure the dad's going, am I gay? Am I gay? What's going on here? I mean, he knows he betrayed his wife. That's a big enough secret right there.
Right.
But his is doubly worse. He's not going to say anything because it crossed so many lines,
Right.
So, and then he's got the wife questioning everything about how she feels about her marriage and so their minds are busy, I think, preoccupied.
Yes. And so they made horrible decisions because you find out that during that 2 years when all this was going down that he had been over there and would lay in her bed with her.
Yeah.
And sleep in her room with her.
Yep.
And he would always go in there and...
I'm sorry. Let me just stop you. Because he kind of confessed that he had a sexual problem. So he went out to California to talk to a therapist.
Right.
And the therapist gave him this treatment. And the treatment was, like Chris said, to lay with this daughter and put headphones on and listen to these tapes that the therapist made him.
The therapist recorded these tapes. And you do find out later that through the FBI guys... that this therapist was not a licensed therapist. He had lost his license, probably because he was a pedophile himself.
Exactly.
They didn't really specify other than that he just was not an active, legal therapist. And so, at least in the documentary, for the the drama scenes where they have the actors playing these people, he's laying beside this little girl while she's sleeping, and he also always gave her these quote unquote vitamins and her allergy pills.
Yes.
And listen to these headphones with these weird messages from this therapist saying she's caressing you and all this kind of stuff. Like, that's
Yes.
not part of anybody's therapy.
No.
But the parents said, okay, it's not a problem.
And see, here's the thing. What I believe at this point, Chris, I believe with this therapy and with the mom allowing her to go the horseback trip, I think he was so genius because he has each parent thinking, he doesn't want anything to do with my 11-year-old daughter because he's into me.
Exactly.
I think they're both thinking that.
Exactly.
So he's no threat at all to her. He has sexual urges and he's trying to help himself by going to see this therapist.
Right.
But he really wants me deep down is what he's got them all thinking.
Exactly. Everybody's, it's about them.
Yep.
And they're not going to, if he, and that seems like an odd request, right? Because, hey, do you mind if my therapist says I need to sleep in Jan's room and just lay with her.
Right.
And whatever. And it's like, yeah, go ahead. Because if they say no,
exactly,
then he's going to say, well, I'll just tell your wife about what you did in the car, or I'll tell your husband about what we did in the car. And it's like, at that point, you're like, these people are fucking stupid.
They are.
Because
they're so naive.
They're so naive.
Manipulative.
And there's, in that sense, selfish because their daughter's in there, and I would absolutely give up my secret before I let something like that happen. But again, they do say, to be fair, in those days, they didn't hear about pedophiles and sex offenders. There was no internet.
Even the FBI guy said that the word pedophile wasn't even in their literature.
Right.
He said it might have been in a dictionary somewhere, but we call them stranger dangers.
Right, yeah, like you were taught as a kid.
Yeah.
Stranger danger. Don't talk to strangers. And that's really as far as they told you.
Yeah.
They didn't tell you what the actual repercussions were about getting in somebody's white van for candy.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Yes. So yeah, it's a real weird dynamic, and hindsight's 20/20, of course.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
And I think that because of weird things like this, like Chris said, this is around the time we were born. All the the John Wayne Gacy's and stuff had starting to surface, and our parents and our teachers and everybody was so quick to teach us that we grew up knowing that this shit is not right.
Yes.
And I think, unfortunately, they were on the tail end of, trust everybody you know from church.
Yeah, exactly. That mentality.
Yeah. And so the writing comes up on the screen, and it says that over this time he laid with her 4 nights a week for 6 months.
All the way up until the kidnapping.
All the way up until the kidnapping.
And that's what's crazy to me is when you think about that. For 2 years, he had already admitted, he already had these things with the parents.
Yep.
He had already admitted to having a thing for the daughter, but he's getting treatment.
Yes.
And she still let her go to this horse riding trip.
Yeah.
She still let her go.
Yep.
Because it was still normal.
And
I mean,
unfortunately for me, I believe that, you know how when people confess things, they confess enough to where you think, oh, bless your heart, you confessed.
yes.
But I believe probably by the time the kidnapping happened, more than just him jerking the guy off in the car and more than him touching the mom's breast had happened.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I think they were knee deep in affairs. One was homosexual, one was not, but they were both probably in a deep sexual affair.
I would think
with
so
him.
too, because I don't know if that's enough.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Exactly. That's the way I feel about it. I hope it's not
You cheated,
enough.
but cheating is cheating, yes,
Yeah.
but there's a level that gets, I don't know, it's really, we'll get into that, it's complicated.
And we were assuming that, but it just feels that way,
Right, for them to let her go. I
Yep.
mean, on this, day trip with this guy who's already openly, that you find out, admitted to liking this girl
Yeah.
in a sexual way.
Yeah, so now we've laid all this groundwork. let's go back to, just like the documentary, go back to the abduction.
Yes.
So you said they found the tire tracks of the RV.
Right. RV was missing, found the tire tracks there, and
then
his
Jan,
prints or whatever.
The girl who was abducted says she woke up in an RV. So literally, basically, she remembers backing out of the driveway, and then she wakes up, and she's tied up in this RV.
She's got straps around her, I guess, her arms and ankles.
Yep. So go ahead.
And so she wakes up in this RV, confused, dazed and confused, obviously. And there's a tape thing playing. Like a tape recorder, I guess. It looked a little different in the thing, but they were just showing, I don't know exactly what they were using. But it was the voice of aliens, apparently, telling her that she had been abducted by aliens. You have their names, because he had this whole story.
Zeta and Zethra.
So Zeta and Zethra, did I say that right?
Yep.
Close enough. Abducted her and gave her this story that she was half alien.
Yep.
That her mother was her mother, but her father was not her real father. She had an alien father from another world.
Yep.
And that something bad was going to happen, and she was the savior in a sense because she had to have a child with a chosen one, so to speak, and she would know who that was when she saw him.
Right.
And that's essentially what got pounded into her head while she's still drug-induced.
Yeah, she's still groggy.
She's 12 years old.
Tied up. Doesn't know where she's at. Because, see, she don't remember getting into the RV. She was in his car last she remembered.
Right.
Now she's in this strange RV she didn't even know existed.
So she falls back out. She wakes back up, and she's now untied.
Yes.
The thing is now playing again. And that's when it says specifically, I think, you'll know the partner that you need to have this child to save the world when you see him. And if you don't do this, by the way, this whole mission thing, we have your sister, because she's also part alien. We're going to use her and take her somewhere.
Yes, we got a backup plan if you
So
fail.
we have a backup plan if you fail us, almighty Zeta.
And the cool thing I thought that she added at this point was her mind immediately went to what she learned in church of, okay, this is just like any Christmas story. The Christmas story I've always heard, Joseph was not Jesus's real dad.
Right.
He was just taking care of him. His dad was, Father God. And his mom was really his mom. So she immediately went to that and thought, oh, maybe this is real, And,
yeah, this is legit.
Yeah.
So I guess she gets up, walks around out of that room in the RV, and there's B, fucking Bumblebee, laying on the couch,
acting like
he's asleep,
knocked out or something,
with some little bit of blood on his hand or arm or
Yes.
something. Maybe rub some on his cheek. And she sees somebody that she's familiar with, that she has she's happy to have seen him, that,
Right.
because she's known him for all these years, and there's she is not aware of all this sexual stuff that's actually happened in her own bed.
Exactly.
And she wakes him up thinking, hey, it's you, it's got to be you, and there's a plan. We've been abducted by aliens. And he, of course, plays the part. And apparently they go on this trip from this point on to Mexico.
Yeah.
I believe,
Yeah.
right? I believe that's when they went to Mexico.
They did go to Mexico, but he started pulling out books out of the bookshelf.
Right.
And it was showing, she said, basically sex stuff in there, how to make a baby kind of stuff.
Right.
So, I mean, like this
he
guy
was
covered all the bases.
Like he was studying with her. Like, okay, all right, there's a plan.
This is what we've got to do.
Here's what we got to do. Let's look this up.
Yes.
And pull out books on sex and all this kind of stuff. And then they go to Mexico.
Yes.
So that's crazy enough. But the crazier part is that they get to Mexico, and she is now talked into this story.
Yep.
So he does these horrible things.
He does.
While she describes it as she's staring out the top of this RV, there's like the little portal window, and there's some tree above the thing.
Yeah.
She don't know exactly where they are.
She could see the leaves blowing and stuff.
And she would just watch the leaves while he did these horrible things. But he was careful not to.
He didn't hurt her.
He didn't hurt her.
Yeah, he was real gentle.
Yes, and she made that clear, and because he knew that there would be a physician inspect her later.
Absolutely.
So
said he would only go in about an inch or whatever.
Right. So without getting too graphic about it, yes,
because that does come back into play once she is discovered.
So at this point, they, I think the FBI figured out where they were. They called the federales in Mexico.
No,
am I skipping something?
Well, no, not really.
Or they called
the brother. He calls his brother.
Yes. That's right.
And brother says, "We're in Mexico. Call her parents and say we will come back if they let us get married.
If they give permission, because in Mexico they could have.
Yeah, they can get married. She can get married at 12 in Mexico.
Right. But in obviously not in the United States, that was not a thing. You had to have permission.
So he called. The mom was like, "No way will we give permission for that." And he's like, "Well, he's not coming home." And then he said, I started thinking, nah, it's time to get him home. So he let the FBI tap his phone line. They found out where he was, and then they called the federales. Yeah.
There you go. So, and let me really quickly say, too, the brother is just so straightforward and a matter of fact. I think he's responsible for part of this, too, at least not, maybe not in this particular case.
He's an accomplice.
But he's an accomplice in some way, because he straight out said, "Oh, my brother's a sicko."
Yeah.
He's been like that since he was 12 years old.
Yep.
A pervert.
He's a pervert.
He likes
pedophile.
little girls.
Yep, likes little girls.
And it's like, dude, didn't you tell anybody all those years? Because you find out at the very end of this thing, we'll get into all that later, but you find out there were 6 other girls.
Right.
Not just Jan.
Yep.
Over the course of his life, I'm assuming.
You get the feeling from the brother that he is intimidated by him, because it was his big brother. You could tell he was still intimidated by him. But you also get the feeling that he must not have had daughters of his own.
Yeah, exactly. Because he just didn't, he knew it, but he didn't say anything to anybody.
Absolutely.
And again, in those days, if he knew his brother just liked little girls, and I think he mentioned like messing with some little cousin.
Their half-sister. Yes.
When he was like 12 and she was 6 or something.
Yep.
So he mentioned that happened, but I don't, in those days, who knows if he actually told it. They didn't really go into that. I'm just assuming a lot. So did he tell somebody and they don't believe you in those days, especially?
Yeah,
I don't know. It's weird.
It was a bad time for that kind of stuff.
Exactly. So
family secrets were kept.
Yeah, it was just unheard of. And there was no internet to spread the rumors and the gossip and all that. So anyway, so they do find him. They arrest him and take him to, she described it as like this dark prison in Mexico.
Yep.
And I guess to be extradited to the U.S. or whatever, because the FBI is now involved and all
right.
that. And before they were separated I guess they were separated there.
They were separated
there. He gave
there.
them, he said, B did to Jan, that Zeta had contacted him.
Hold on.
Right?
Yeah, they were separated. But he gave one of these Mexican prison guards his gold watch so he would bring Jan to his cell. Then when she's there, he says, "Hey, listen, I was visited by Zeta and Zethra,
right.
and they told me to give you these rules before we go back home." And the rules were stuff like, don't tell anybody about what happened on our trip. Don't tell anybody about the mission that you're on.
Yeah, the alien mission to make a child.
Yeah.
And don't associate with any men, including your father.
Yeah.
So that, because they're going to come asking, and we can't screw this up. Remember because that was the other part that was added. Because if you don't, not only will they take your sister, but you will be vaporized.
Yeah, you'll be vaporized. That's right.
So it became a physical threat type thing.
Yeah,
as well.
And so now imagine this: she's still in Mexico. The only person in the world that's with her right now that she knows and trusts is him, and he's telling her this so matter-of-factly, and she's already believing the tapes, so she believes him. Oh, you've heard from him now too? Okay, this is real. Still, it's just enforcing this in her mind.
Yeah, and she even says in the documentary at this point, as she's thinking back on this, that she's still fully invested and worried about the mission. Like, it's not even a thing to her that she's been kidnapped and they've had these sexual relations and all this stuff. That it's all about the mission and
saving the human race.
saving the race, and also there's a little insurance there, obviously, with the sister.
That's right.
There's always the insurance
You got that
policy.
right. He does. Yeah, he's got the insurance policy with everybody he deals with.
Everybody.
Which, again, he may have known something on his brother.
That's true. That's a good point.
Damn.
He might have.
Made me think
until
of that.
Until he was, they promised him whatever for,
Yes.
busting him later on.
Yeah.
Maybe. So, anyway, so I guess at this point, they do send him home. She comes home and they see their child for the first time. And what was the total time they were gone? It was like months at least.
It was. I want to say, God,
because it said
12
like
weeks.
day. It was like days, like showed like day number 62 or something.
Yeah.
So it had to be at least a couple months.
It was a couple months. Yep.
So they get back in the U.S., I believe, and she seems okay and everything. But now the dad said that on the flight back and everything, she would not sit next to him.
Yeah.
And she's not our Jan. But then later on, the mom says she goes back to school when they get home and everything's fine. She's making good grades and everything seems fine.
Yep. But the thing was, I believe the sister might have said that she started acting more independent and more grown up acting and stuff like that. So also you find out the FBI agent says, that this had been a nationwide manhunt, that they had even, had border patrols because they thought they might go to Mexico. So
yeah, and
a
they
lot
had
of
them in
time and
Mexico and
manpower
Canada
invested in this. So they come back home. The FBI is ready to nail this guy.
Yeah, they got everything they need.
They do.
They got the brothers' wiretaps. They've got the history. They've got all this stuff.
And then the B, his wife, who you don't hear of much.
Yeah,
in this
you don't hear
documentary,
about wife and kids from them on that side at all.
She comes to visit the family and has these affidavits wanting them to sign them. And the affidavits, basically, if they sign them, they're dropping all charges against him, or he is going to spread the secrets that they've been hiding this whole time about the affairs with both parents. And they did not want that to happen, and they signed them.
And they signed the damn affidavits. This is what blows my mind.
Me too.
After all this shit, that your daughter's been kidnapped for months.
Yeah.
You find out 2 years of abuse was going on in your house. They've both done something inappropriate with this dude. And you let him off the hook by signing affidavits saying, we let her go. It was our decision. Everything's fine.
And, okay, I will say this. That, I believe maybe a big player in this was what we were talking about earlier. She was checked out by a doctor, and the doctor said her hymen was still intact. So technically, she still was a virgin. He did not take her virginity.
Right.
And so maybe that.
So that almost reinforced again this trust. Like,
yeah,
I just like her a lot.
Yeah. So I don't know, man. I couldn't believe they signed took the charges, away. And
so he walks scot-free.
Yeah, the
And
FBI's pissed,
and they are pissed off, and they're like, "Wait a minute, you're just after all this, you don't think." Because when they came home, they said, "Look, don't have anything to do with him or his family. Don't let your kids play together," and they still did.
Yep,
they still did. And this wife was also an accomplice.
Yeah,
there's no way she's not an accomplice.
No
she's the
way.
one that brought the affidavits. She's the one like, don't call the cops. I'm sure they'll be fine. What is she? She just wants that dude there that bad for 5 kids? I don't know.
It makes me wonder,
I wish she would have been interviewed, or at least their children, in this documentary.
I really do too. That was a big missing piece, because I'd like to know what was home like. Was she physically afraid of him?
Right.
Or was he so charismatic that she was, mesmerized by him like everybody else seemed to be?
Yeah, and I don't know if I buy it being so charismatic as is just like the wife said. It's just things that I hadn't heard in so long, and I hadn't, it made me feel a certain way. I just don't buy. I don't know. Maybe he was, but I don't know if he was just that charismatic.
Yeah.
I don't know
Well,
if
she
anybody
said he
can
was
be.
more charismatic than Bob. But
Well,
I don't
sure.
think you don't have to be, Fonzie to be to be more charismatic than old Bob. there.
Right, because Bob's just a regular old
He's
guy. I'm sure he's a
just a
good
florist.
guy, but he's a florist and right. So it's kind of the bad boy thing. I don't know, whatever.
I think you're right. The bad
There's
boy
always
thing.
the bad boy thing.
Yeah.
He's the bad boy, and
It's
I like
exciting.
It's exciting and new, and he's telling me things Bob don't tell me anymore.
Right.
So they let him walk. He moves out of town.
Yep.
I don't think it's too
Lives
far.
in his RV.
Lives in his RV. I think now at this point, I don't remember. Does he get a divorce from his wife? I think he does at this point.
I know they're
Or is that
definitely
later?
separated.
Yes. So I don't. I think that came. Maybe his divorce was technically later.
Maybe so.
So he moved away.
For all intents and purposes,
Yeah.
purposes, they were split up.
Yeah. So
separate
after
divorce.
protecting him, she lost him anyway.
Yeah.
Basically, is what it boils down to.
But he still calls the family. They still answer.
Still answer the calls.
Still call him B.
They didn't listen to the FBI.
And he is sneaking notes. Other students, he's having them deliver notes to Jan while she's in school, and taking notes from Jan back to him. And they show some of the notes on there.
Yeah.
And they're love letters.
They're love letters to a 12-year, or maybe she's 13 at the time.
Maybe so,
at this
yeah.
point, who cares?
40-year-old, 13-year-old.
And the notes would say, "Go out to this payphone at this time," and he would call her, and all this stuff. And she's still all about the mission.
Yep.
I mean, she's just crazy.
It really blows your mind. And, I mean, he brainwashed her. He absolutely did.
Absolutely. Under the influence of whatever that was. There's
Yeah.
no telling.
And so she still has it in her mind that they need to be together. She openly says to her family she wants to marry him.
And now she says it went from, Uncle B love to I want to marry him type of love.
Yes.
And she's 12 years old or 13 at the time.
And the mission was have a kid by 16.
Yeah, there you go. Right. We forgot to mention the
Right.
16 part. But
So
yeah.
she knows she has a little bit of time to be rebellious and, not run away just yet.
Right. So now she's doing fine in school and all that. She's getting these letters, returning them, under the cover of darkness, so to speak. She's basically being an asshole to her dad.
And B calls the mom
And B
and
calls the
says,
mom.
"Hey, listen,
Mom.
I still want to marry Jan,
But
if you come over here by yourself, I'll tell you all about everything, and you'll understand," something like that. So she goes
of
by
course,
herself to his RV.
somehow says, "Hey, Bob, I'm going to go see B."
Yes.
Or either she lies and says, "I'm going to play bridge,"
Exactly.
and goes over to his damn RV.
And
And
in
guess what happened?
In the RV, she said, "What? It starts with a hand on the knee, and then it winds up,
Full-fledged,
sexual intercourse.
home base for Bobby B.
So now now the mom's admitting to having sex at this point.
Yeah, so she's
And-
completely crossed the line now.
Yes.
And after all this has happened, and still living this fantasy, kind of like this side thing.
And he's telling her to divorce Bob.
Leave him. He's gay.
Yep.
You can have a wonderful life with me. All you got to do is divorce him and
Yep.
move in here.
Yep. And bring your kids.
And she knows she crosses the line and all that stuff, even though this is what really bothered me a little bit. Again, I don't want to beat up on him because there was a lot of stuff we're probably missing. It was a weird time, and they didn't fully know the extent of everything, whatever. But she still seemed to be smiling.
I
And
know.
when she's talking about how he talked to her and complimented her.
I swear she's hearing Dreamweaver in her mind.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Dreamweaver.
She is still infatuated with the guy.
She still is.
Yep. It's like, how you get that far away look, and she's got it.
She's got that
Yeah.
little smirk
Yep.
and that
Like she's going through her memories going,
man, it was so good.
yeah, those were the days.
I know.
If the RV's rocking.
Don't come knocking. Jesus. I'm sorry. We're
You're right, though.
it's just insane. I mean, so after all this, she goes over there and screws the dude.
Yeah.
And at this point, there were, obviously that was found out. She admitted it, and they were going to divorce.
Yeah. He was trying to basically, okay, they're not going to let this 13-year-old come live with me, obviously. So how can I get her over here?
Yes.
Oh, I know.
I'll
get the
mom.
mom to come and bring her with her. Bring the kids,
And that way I can play them both.
Carte blanche,
Exactly. So, long story short, they were going to actually divorce. They had some major issues, obviously, after he found out. It broke his heart. She, of course, knew about, I think at this point, the hand job with him.
Yeah.
I believe. And, but then she came to her senses and said, I'm not leaving my husband.
Yep, she did.
She came to her senses and
Love
did the right
prevailed.
thing.
Yep.
Love did prevail. They had a moment, her and poor old Bob, and they saved their marriage.
They did.
sense.
I'm proud of them.
Yeah. So, I believe after this was what?
Oh, he buys a little amusement park.
yes.
Basically a little arcade / amusement park for kids. Shocker.
Yeah, exactly.
And says, hey, let Jan come work here for the summer. I think he actually had the brother asking him again. And they said no, of course. They're starting to try to make sensible decisions.
Oh yeah, really quick too. The brother thing again. I'm sorry. But it just reminded me. So while he's living out there, he's working for his brother selling cars.
Oh yeah, there was a little time there before he bought the amusement park.
Yes.
Yeah,
And he
went and
works,
sold cars for
he
his
sold
brother.
cars, and his brother's like bragging on him.
Yeah.
Like, he sold cars out the ass.
Yeah, he could sell anything to anybody.
Exactly.
And
So
it's like,
anyway,
yeah, of course he could. He can convince people to give him their daughter.
obviously.
And convince a straight man to give him a hand job. The jury's out on
Yeah,
that.
exactly.
So
Not so much.
so anyway, this is when I wish we had video.
I know. Hey, yes. Let's mention that really quickly because people don't listen on YouTube till long enough on these podcasts. But we are adding video, ladies and gentlemen. We keep saying that every week. We know, but we're just reminding people, anybody that's new that may not know yet.
Yeah.
We're adding video coming in. It's going to be months down the road, but we have a studio coming with my new house and all this stuff. So yes, we're going to think Joe Rogan style. That's what we're doing.
So you can get all the
multiple cameras and see our actual hand
funny
motions.
looks and air quotes and whatever we're
Right,
doing.
exactly. So anyway, I'm sorry.
So yeah, he buys a theme park, asked if she'd come out, work for the summer. They say no. So
Yeah, the first time they said no, by the way, to anything.
I agree. Yeah, it is.
I mean, after all this, first time they actually said no.
And he, so Jan is going crazy at this point. She's just the most rebellious little 13-year-old. She's damn determined to go work at this theme park for him.
Yep.
And she
mission.
leaves them a note and says, I'm running away. And she went to live at the theme park with him and worked there. And his brother went and visited. And he said, it was really weird because they were clearly a couple. My brother and this 13-year-old girl. And I mean, he almost had the attitude like, whatever blows your skirt up, not my deal, but I could tell
That's
my brother
what bothers
was in love.
me. Exactly. That's what bothers me about him is he knows it's wrong.
Yeah.
And he's like so scared or not. I don't even know if he's scared. Like you mentioned, maybe there's something he had over him.
Yeah.
I don't know. But he's just like, beat his ass, dude.
Right.
I don't know. I'm sorry. Just go ahead.
Help get him put under the jail.
Exactly.
So here's the thing. She ran away for a long time, longer than working at the theme park. And the parents, then B is calling them saying, have you heard from her? I don't know where she's at. And acting like, he's not in on it. And they're kind of believing it seems like. Well, there's no way. As much as he loved her, he wouldn't call us all this many times.
Exactly. So after all this stuff, she runs away. She's 13 still.
Yep.
And he's calling her, and they're openly answering the phone and believing anything. Like he's worried about her, and the whole time, of course, he knows exactly where she's at.
Yeah, and it's bothered me and Chris that the calls were recorded. Obviously, the FBI was back involved. probably pissed about it, but they were back involved. And it bothered me and Chris that when you'd hear these calls, she would still answer the phone and go, "Oh, hey, B."
Hey, B.
Yeah.
Oh, my.
Still calling him a nickname, you know? It'd be
Yeah,
like,
call him bastard.
yeah, hey, motherfucker.
What you want, motherfucker?
Yeah.
You know, I mean, I'm sorry.
Why are you calling me? You know, we're looking for our daughter. If you can't help, leave us the hell alone.
Knowing that they really know.
They know.
They
They're
have
not
to know at this point.
that naive.
Exactly. There's nobody that naive in the world. I don't care what year it is.
Yeah.
I
And
mean, you
so-
have to know that he knows where she's at. She's there.
And he's playing an act.
And they're not doing anything about it. And it's driving me insane still.
Yeah. I mean, the dad should go to that theme park and wring his damn neck.
You damn right.
Or if he can't, if he thinks physically Bob B could whip his ass, he has to have friends.
Or a
You know,
gun. I don't
yeah,
care.
anything.
Yeah, whatever.
And
Baseball
go
bats,
down there
whatever.
with a couple of your buddies and break his damn kneecaps.
Exactly.
And, so anyway, the FBI finds they start watching his every move, surveilling him, and they see he goes to a payphone and he leaves the phone book open, and in there's a number to a Catholic girls' school in California.
Right.
They contact that school. They're like, no, we don't know, Jan Broberg or whatever. And so they find out she's there under an alias,
Yes.
that B had taken her there acting like he was her father, and he was a CIA agent.
Yeah, he worked for the CIA. Is what these, and I don't know how you get into a Catholic school by just saying that.
Right.
But if
the
anybody
internet has helped us
fact
fact check people
no
a
doubt,
lot
no
these
doubt.
days.
Yeah, no doubt. But yeah, if anybody comes here looking for her, they're after me. So don't let anybody have any information
About her at all. And so finally they get her and they bring her back home kicking and screaming.
And she is kicking and screaming.
Yeah.
At this point.
And so here's where I'm starting to get a little fuzzy.
Well,
charges leveled against him at this point.
Yeah, he had got arrested for something else, because, well, no, I think at some point they found out that he had served time for another girl for 1 year.
Yep.
For 1
That's
year.
right.
At some point, they all, Jan snapped out of it.
Yes.
And realized what was going on. This was all about, child molestation.
Yes.
And that's all it was about. And they all came to their senses and kind of got their shit together.
Yeah. And moved on.
And kind of moved on and left him behind and whatever. And so 28 years later, I think.
In the 90s, the mom starts writing a book.
Yeah, she starts writing about it in the
Yeah.
90s and finishes like late
Yeah, you're right.
2000.
It's like 28 years later, the book's finished, and they're doing book tours.
Yes, so
that's what it is.
now Jan has now turned it into a positive, and she's her and her mother are going around, doing speeches, and they're promoting this book and trying to spread awareness about this type of thing. And this guy, for all this time, was gone, long gone, hadn't seen anybody in 30 years almost, and he starts showing up at their press conferences and their talks and speeches saying, this is all lies, you're just doing all this to sell books, it's all a lie,
Yeah.
and you're slandering me and all this kind of shit. And during one of these things,
he starts posting or handing out all these typed up flyers that tell about all the things that he did with the mom and the dad too.
yeah, starting to spread their secret to the public.
Yes.
30 years later.
Yep.
So apparently at one of these events, there were a group of bikers, and I wish I had that name because it was Bikers Against Child Abuse or something.
Yeah, yeah.
So it was one of these biker games.
Baka or something.
Yeah, it's
like
one of these
that.
cool biker games
Yeah.
that that guard people. So they were there with them at this event. He shows up. They recognize him, and they don't play. So
Absolutely.
they say, "Hey, there's that B dude. Let's go get him." He hops in his van or whatever. One of them jumps on the hood.
Yeah.
And he takes off and slams on brakes, knocks the person off the hood. They get hurt pretty good.
Yep.
And he gets arrested for weapons possession and I think assault and battery or whatever.
What he did with the vehicle.
What he did with the vehicle. So he does get put in jail for that.
Yep.
So she had to get a restraining order for life
against this dude.
28 years later.
Yes.
And then when these other things start coming out about the other girls,
Yes.
and there's going to be actual rape charges.
Right.
And he gets found guilty, and he gets indicted, and they say, you'll come back next week and we'll sentence you.
Yeah, because like as we've seen with, say, Bill Cosby, I don't think there is a statute of limitations on rape.
Right.
And probably...
But this was
definitely,
mainly for...
No, there is on rape, that's right. But child
Yes.
molestation, I don't think there is.
Right.
So he was older now, but he knew he was still going to get some time.
Right. And it was first just off the weapons charge and the battery, assault and battery.
Yeah.
And he told his brother, I'm not going back to be sentenced because if I do 1 day in jail, it'll be. And his brother just, like he says, a matter of factly, so that bastard just took all his heart medicine and drank some Kahlua and he died.
That's how he
That's
said
exactly how he said it.
it. His brother's
His
suicide.
brother. So he killed himself.
Yeah.
And that's what pisses me off, is he never got to go, nobody got to shove a broomstick up his ass in prison or kill him or whatever they would have done. He took the easy way out, and killed himself, and never got to be punished, technically,
Right.
for all this shit. And so at this point, years later, she's now, written this book, and I don't know exactly what they're doing to this day. I don't know if they're still traveling around talking or whatever, but this book is a thing.
Yeah.
The family's back to, they've all kind of, forgiven and everything. And that was a big thing too, was
The forgiveness
of the parents.
Yeah.
Because I think she even said it was hardest on my dad because
Absolutely.
he was my dad. He was supposed to protect his little girl, and he was so naive. And he,
Yep.
and I feel bad for him in that sense, and for mom too. But at the same time, while this is going on and the way they're describing it, and it's just like, how many times can you the whole fool me once, shame on me.
Yeah.
Or fool me twice, shame on me.
Listen, it's not like, we are beating them up a little bit, but we're not beating them up off of a third-hand story. This is right from their mouth.
Yes. No, you're right. Exactly.
So we're just beating them up, and I know they've beat themselves up worse than we ever could.
Yeah.
And Chris and I each said, hey, it's clear he loved his daughters. It's
no
clear.
doubt.
And
No
his
doubt.
wife. He made some mistakes. And
some bad
looking
ones.
back, I told Chris, I believe the biggest mistake they made was initially signing that affidavit, dropping charges against him after the Mexico
Right,
trip.
because that's when their own pride took over and their own shame.
Yep.
And they protected themselves over their daughter.
Yep, they were worried then about him telling the stories about what he did with them more than getting him locked up and keeping him from doing it to their daughter or anybody else's.
Exactly.
That was their biggest mistake.
The crazy thing about this is, as crazy as that story is, and how manipulative he was with everyone, is that there's so many other what I consider accomplices in this. The brother, maybe, to a degree.
Yeah.
The wife, for damn sure.
Right.
There's no doubt. There's no way that she just didn't know something was going on.
No way. Listen, we've both lived with women. They ask a lot of questions.
Yeah, where you going?
Yes.
You ain't going. No, you ain't.
How many times you go to the ice cream shop this week with that little girl?
Come
come
on,
on, man.
Exactly.
Yeah, she knew something.
Yeah, it started making me think before the first time we watched this was like, yeah, they were involved in some prostitution ring, and she was involved. She was, helping
Really?
recruit little girls too.
Something.
It made you think that, but the parents in their own way, because after all this stuff, they still just signed this affidavit and let him go, only to continue, and then her to go over there and screw him,
Yep.
and go all the way to home base.
And there was
after all this stuff had happened with the touching and then the dad's hand job and all that. It's just crazy.
They interviewed another neighbor, a third neighbor there, and he said they all went on a fishing trip or on a boating trip or something, and he saw immediately that B had the hots for the little girl and said, "I'll never go hang out with them again because of that."
Right.
So other adults in that time frame
That's what I was going to say. Exactly.
saw that there was something wrong about
So
that.
it's not just like in the old days
Yeah,
type thing
that's
where we
right.
just didn't hear about it.
That's right.
Other people knew immediately there was a problem.
Yep.
And
So-
they were so naive or a little naive and selfish, like I was saying,
Yep.
is they just allowed it to happen.
And ashamed and everything. I mean, he was a master manipulator.
I mean, she even said
honestly.
when they signed the affidavits to let him go getting back from Mexico that they didn't get lots of good phone calls.
That's
They got
right.
Lots of bad phone calls from neighbors in the community and I'm sure church members and
a
all
lot
that
of the
stuff.
same neighbors who she was bragging on before, like when she was missing, all the neighbors, that whole community came together and rallied around them and
Right.
everything.
The same
so
ones.
you can imagine
Yeah.
when you drop charges after all that worrying and everything that happened, you're getting your daughter back safe. So many people don't.
And it's for what? So you can go have a life with this dude? You think he's... Because that's the thing. That was the whole game, right?
Yeah.
Is like you said earlier, they're all thinking, well, this is all really about me.
Exactly.
And it's like, wait, what do you want to go live with the dude? And Dad, do you want to go live with the dude? I mean, we know the little girl's manipulated. She's got an excuse. She's 12.
That's right.
And under, intoxication.
Yep.
Most of the time. And she ended up saying that over the course of those 2 years and the abduction and the second time, that he abused her well over 200 and something times.
Yes.
And
And I
that's what I
noticed-
hate is that he didn't get to go to prison and get abused well over 200 and something times.
And I told Chris, now I know some women do this, but I did notice that she still has her maiden name on,
Right.
beneath her when she's talking, and it makes you wonder if it screwed her up so bad that she.
Yeah, I mean, I
has
can
not-
imagine she probably can't really trust men.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's in general or if something maybe she just uses that for her, being an author or a
Yeah,
speaker.
That's right. She
But
could.
the sisters had their married
Yeah.
names, because they're now all older,
And
obviously,
so-
and married.
And it could be to do with that because, on the book it says the Jan Broberg story, and then if she's Jan Broberg, I could see her using that name. But
Yeah,
it
maybe-
makes you wonder.
It does.
She's got to carry a lot of scars.
There's no doubt about it. She carries some scars, but she, in the documentary, of course, it's I don't know, if it's a couple years old,
Right.
at the most. I mean, she seems to be doing really well.
I agree.
I mean,
and
you
they asked
you never know what people are hiding, but
they asked her if she forgave him.
yeah, and she said that's a tricky
It's
word.
a tricky word.
But she did make a good point. She said, I think when you don't forgive, it's almost building the jail cell around you. And I agree with
I
that.
totally agree with that.
So I've always had, my thing was always forgive but never forget. And I think that's
Yeah.
where she's basically saying. Because you can't, you can't forget it. And what I really liked about it is at the end of the day, the family, they did forgive each other. They're all doing well, I believe.
The youngest sister said, "I don't feel like I was robbed of my childhood."
Yeah, that she was very
Yeah.
blessed with her parents.
Yep.
And so it wasn't that they were horrible parents. It was just this, concentrated time period that whatever happened, they all got screwed in the head some way.
That's right.
So the great thing is that she turned into a positive. She's speaking, and like I said, I don't know if she's still, I'm assuming since it's fairly new documentary,
It
she
is.
still is.
Yeah.
So she's doing the speaking with her mother and taking her around, and they're still married. Mom and dad are still together. And again, all the sisters are married and everything. So
And with all of the evidence, because the documentary plays all these phone call recordings where he is saying he loves her and he thinks about her all the time. They're reading love letters he wrote her. They're
Right.
showing pictures he took of her. With all this insurmountable evidence, it shows them in court, and he looks at her and says, "You're making all this up so you can sell more books and possibly make a movie down the road." I mean, he denied it till the very
till the end. And then he says, "I'm sorry," or whatever. What is your real goal, Jan?
Yeah.
And she's like, "My goal is to educate people so they don't get caught up with people like you."
Yes.
And she got the
I
last
was
word.
proud of her.
She got the last word, but I still hate that he killed himself. I'm fine with that in itself.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, burn in hell, dude. I don't give a
Right.
shit. But I just wanted him to go to prison.
I did too.
And be there, and they would have taken care of it.
There would have.
There would have been some suffering and all that good stuff, eye for an eye, whatever. You know what I mean? I'm not one to typically, in cases like this, though, fuck them.
Fuck them.
Fuck them.
Yeah.
It's just, there's no other way to put it.
He ruined a little girl.
Because, I'm all about second chances. People make mistakes, but this kind of thing is just a sick dude who needs to fucking die slow.
Right.
You know what I mean? There's a difference between mistake and this.
And, trust us when we tell you, the things we try to recommend to you guys, documentaries and movies and whatnot, we don't recommend everything we watch, just like Chris said in the beginning. And there are tons of kidnap, documentaries out there. So this one has so many cool twists and crazy twists. I really do recommend that everybody, if you have not watched it, give this one a shot.
Yeah, even if you didn't pause the video or the podcast on whatever platform you're listening to it on, and you just followed along with what we're saying, go watch it. Just watch it. And it does help to see the reenactments and seeing the actual person, because she's on here a lot, and the parents are on here, the real people,
the real FBI
agent, everything. So it does. So you'll get more of the craziness out of the actual, obviously, documentary, better than we can describe it. We covered it pretty damn good, though.
I feel like that. So too.
I think we definitely hit the majority of things. But
the only thing in my mind as we were talking that I feel like we left out was the trampoline thing.
Yeah, that was one of those during the time before the kidnapping that, sleepovers, and they would sleep out on the trampoline under the stars. I remember doing that as a kid, by the way.
Agree, I know.
And he would lay out there with them, and she woke up one middle of the night or whatever, and her panties were down, and it just...
He said you were restless and rolling around and stuff.
Maybe you just got uncomfortable and took them off.
And I liked her response. She said, I believed that.
Yeah.
Because that was easier to believe than this man that I loved and trusted pulling them down.
Exactly.
That's the thoughts of a kid right there.
That's the thoughts of a kid. Yeah. And she was brainwashed.
Yeah.
So,
but I give us an A on this. Yeah. Review. We did really good.
We're self-rating now.
Yeah.
We give us 5-star reviews. Exactly. No. This was a good one, and it's really fascinating regardless of the horror story. Because just again, I think a lot of these that we do dwell on the psychology of people, and I'm not a psychologist, but it's fascinating how people think.
It is,
and how people can, you're just wondering, how can these parents let this happen?
You try to put yourself in their shoes,
and
you really do.
And it's really fascinating and get into the mind of these criminals, because they're not. It's not normal.
It is not.
They're not normal people. It's a sickness. It's fucking horrible, and but it's fascinating to learn about it, and hopefully it helps prevent things. That's the goal. Obviously.
Absolutely.
So anyway, we're right at an hour, so that was good timing. Good timing with that one. We're getting professional here.
We are.
And when we add the damn video, God, it'll be so much better.
It will.
I think for at least YouTube. I know a lot of people listen on SoundCloud, Google Play, iTunes, Spotify, and Podbean. That, by the way. So, feel free to drop us a rating there if you don't mind.
Yeah.
And be sure to do me a favor and subscribe on YouTube channel and let us know there. We read the comments there.
Yeah, those are so awesome.
What you think about it, if you've seen it, once you see it, and if we missed anything or whatever, anything you want to add, obviously, or any, crazy stories, maybe other documentaries,
Yeah, definitely.
Because we always, we could talk about anything here. There's no rules, but we seem to always at least come back to these true crime things.
Yeah, they're so awesome.
Yeah, they're cool to explore.
They're
horrible.
We love psychoanalyzing.
They're horrible, but they're they're fascinating. Is what I'm saying.
They really are.
So let us know what you think in the comments on YouTube. And I guess I don't know. Next week, I don't know if we have any particular plan for next week.
I'm not sure.
We always kind of just go week to week, and we got some more guests coming up. As more Patreon guests as usual, and so I'll post on Patreon again too. By the way, we could do more, dear smoke screens, advice type things. Those are fun.
I can't wait till we do part 2 of it.
But anybody on Patreon, feel free to let us know what kind of topics you're into, because we want some guests on here from time to time, and if we need an expert. we need experts in certain fields, or
Yes,
just
we
something
do.
you've studied in depth or whatever. We're into it. We're into anything.
Absolutely.
So anyway, appreciate you listening. What?
I'm a little frustrated. Can you help me out?
Fuck off, man. Go jerk off or something. What are you fucking crazy? Get the fuck out of here. And fade to black.